Good morning. Thank you so much, Yves and Chaire, for organizing today, and our hosts here at the University in Bordeaux. It's a pleasure to be here. And I hope you can hear me okay. I can't quite tell if the mic is on. My topic today is social and traditional media during crisis. This is a pilot study, a small study of student journalists, and it relates to work that I've done on school shootings. I have investigated other types of crisis reporting, but I've focused quite a bit on school shootings in coverage in the United States media because we've had so many examples of these, and they've been influential in determining how coverage is done. So just to give you a little bit of background, the first investigation that I did was with the Columbine shooting in 1999. And as you know, at this time, we had not yet seen the explosion of social media. And yet, even then, 15 years ago, the shooters, who are on the cover of Time magazine there, had already created what they called video diaries. They used video cameras to take pictures of themselves and explain what they were about to do. And these were designed to be delivered to news media organizations for wider distribution. In that particular case, that material was never distributed. The police have that material and will not release it. Everything else, the 911 emergency calls and a lot of other material was made available, but not the video. They also had website, a very rudimentary website. In 1999, it was immediately taken down and not circulated. But at the same time, I would say they established what I'll call the shooter model, a template for how such an event should be carried out, followed by other school shooters, but a wider application as well. So the idea is you create a vivid self-image. You create a portrait of yourself through the use of technology, through the use of video. You must have a website, and this is all done in the service of creating a heroic portrait of who you are and explaining why you're doing what you're doing, basically aimed at mass media distribution. You see this again in 2005 case in the US at Virginia Tech University. This was a student. He actually he went into a dormitory and murdered 2 students. He then went to the post office and put his videotapes in a special delivery package to New York, NBC in New York. He then returned to the campus and killed 28 more students before that event was over. And those videos were played on NBC and then subsequently on news organizations around the world and widely distributed. In Finland, again, 2007, and another case in 2008. By this time, you see a very much more sophisticated use of websites, video, images of shooters using their guns. He has a shirt on, "Humanity is overrated," and these became central to the coverage of the stories by news media after the fact, after the event took place. This was not a school shooting, but it was something that took place, again, very close to where I live. Columbine is less than an hour from where I live. Aurora, Colorado is less than an hour from where I live. And this was, again, an event that got a great deal of media attention. The shooter was a student himself at the University of Colorado in a doctoral program. And you probably know some of the details of the story. It was widely reported. He entered movie theater at midnight when they were having the premiere of Batman movie, and in the disguise with the orange hair, which is a kind of the iconic picture of him, and killed 12 people, injured 70, and became perhaps not as infamous as the Columbine shooters, but became quite well known. I just want to make one point. When the local Denver Post newspaper in Colorado covered Columbine, they did not, they put out an extra, but they did not have a website. They didn't report it on the website in 1999. In 2012, when they covered the movie massacre, they also won the Pulitzer Prize for that coverage, and the citation from the Pulitzer Committee mentioned the fact that their reporters had done 10,000 plus tweets in the early hours of the coverage. So just to show you how that's changed. And I would say the other thing that's changed is the media model itself. So some lessons have been learned over time. Things like keeping the image of the shooter either out of the front page or very small, to focus on the victims, to talk about what the community lost, and to not make a hero out of the shooter. I would also say that these events have become prevalent enough so that they are no longer the major news stories that they once were. There has to be something special that elevates them, or the coverage is quite limited, and also because of the speed of the news cycle, something might be the top story. A shooting like this might be the top story, but only for 24 hours. And then you see moving on to the next event. So that's what I would call the media model. So to get to the study that I'm doing now, it's about student journalists. And I was interested, and by student journalists I mean students in high school, which is age 14 to 18 years old, before they go to the university. And many schools have student media, a student website, student newspaper. Some is hard copy, some is all online. And I was interested in discussing with the students and their advisors what happens when an event, such as a shooting or another type of crisis, happens in your own school and you have to cover that event yourself. So, and it was not difficult to locate schools where such events had taken place. 2013, Arapahoe High School, student shooting. In December of 2013, this was the victim. One girl was shot and killed, and this was the fellow student who did the shooting. He actually had come back to the school to shoot a teacher, but before he encountered the teacher he was looking for, he just turned a corner and saw a student and shot her and then took his own life. So my research questions for the students and the advisors to the students who I interviewed were whether they preferred social media over traditional media, how much were they influenced by the professional codes of journalists, how do they manage that dual identity of being a student impacted by such an event, and also trying to be removed, a reporter telling what happened. Were they able to have an emotional distance, or were they emotionally just devastated and not able to function in a journalistic capacity? So these were, methodology was to do first-person interviews with students, editors, reporters, and writers, with the advisors who worked with them, and then also with the directors of these large associations of high school press. So just to go to some of the comments that I got that I think are pertinent from the advisors. They talked about, yes, we use Facebook a lot in the beginning. It became an integral part of the school community to go to the Facebook page of the newspaper, and they had, you know, on a daily basis in the early days, 20,000 "I like what you're doing" kind of comments. But they quickly realized that their role was not to simply present facts, and that they couldn't compete for very long with the professional press, because the professional press brings a great deal of resources to bear on such a situation, and they have 5 or 6 students who are trying to keep up with this story. So they said, we knew the facts very quickly, and then the question became, how do we do something that supports what the community needs? There was also the comment by advisors that when the students were unable emotionally to carry out the job of the journalist, they didn't think twice about saying, I don't care. You know, what we need to take care of first is how you're doing, how you're feeling. What quickly emerged was that for the student journalists, writing could be an act of healing. So they quickly came to the conclusion that we're going to do what the professional media cannot do, that we have a different role. It doesn't necessarily involve social media. It involves explaining from the perspective of someone inside the school what that event had meant to them as a community. And so what they began to realize was they wanted to write longer form pieces, have them available in hard copy format, in essentially a glossy magazine. And one of the other things that they wanted to do was also explain to other students how you get help. If you feel that you may be someone who's going to carry out the next crisis, massacre, etc., we want to help you before that event takes place. They did use social media tools, the student journalists. One of, I thought, interesting example, an editor said, the first thing I did was send out a Google survey. And I asked everyone in the student body, should we cover this shooting? How should we cover it? And if we cover it, will you send us the photos you've taken, the blog posts that you have made, because we want to make this an inclusive kind of presentation. We don't want it just to be from the staff of the reporters. We want it to be from anyone in the school who has something to say, and we want you to give us feedback. So they followed the professional model in that they did not display at all photos of the shooters. And they were very sensitive to the power of images. As I said earlier, they turned away from using social media rather quickly, and instead they said, we're going to channel our emotions into our writing. So I want to get to the conclusion, to just say that they use social media to enhance their content, their own content. They had, when they went to what the students had produced, they had a huge selection of photos and quotes and texts, and they also saw it as a timeline on the healing process. So what students said and posted on day 1 was very different from what they said 2 or 3 weeks later. And in fact, it took them more like 2 months to produce their publications, these glossy magazines. I'm going to move on to this because of time issues. So this is from a student editor who says, we see the different uses and strengths of each format. We understand what social media can do for us, and we understand what traditional writing formats and longer form formats can do. And also to say that we're not as disconnected from those older forms of journalism as older generations and other generations would have us believe. So they use both Facebook and social media for organizing, and they gave, I would say they used that tool to give voice to a generation that has lived with violence. And their final comments were that creativity, there is creativity that you cannot get from a Facebook post or a tweet. These are amazing tools, but a tweet is not a story, and what we write and reflect on is irreplaceable. So,
Thank you very much.